Hey guys, having trouble sleeping tonight again? Let's do something about that. Imagine yourself slipping backward through time way past the buzzing of your phone and the hum of traffic outside. You're sitting at the edge of a crackling fire, shadows flickering against jagged rocks, and the only thing between you and the darkness is the orange glow of those flames. Think you're brave. Try standing face to face with a saber-toothed tiger. I bet you'll change your mind instantly. Don't forget to subscribe and share this channel with someone who loves soft bedtime stories. Tonight, let your mind drift along with us, and may this soothing story help you find the sweetest dreams. If you're restless, maybe worried about something tomorrow, or just lying there wondering if sleep will ever come, tell me in the comments what's on your mind. You'll find you're not alone, and letting it out makes the night a little lighter. Maybe pull a blanket a little tighter around you. Listen to the quiet sounds of your room, and prepare to drift peacefully into our tale. The fire hisses as resin from the wood pops, sending tiny sparks into the night. Our human ancestors, tens of thousands of years ago, knew this scene well. They huddle close arms wrapped around knees, eyes darting into the black curtain of wilderness beyond. Out there lurk things with teeth and claws, creatures that do not fear the dark, because the dark belongs to them. For these fragile bands of people, the fire is more than warmth, it's survival. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against the giant beasts surrounding them. But the very fact that you and I exist proves they found ways to push back. In those moments, a simple campfire felt like a fortress. Archaeologists have uncovered charcoal remains in caves across Africa and Europe, evidence that fire was central to nightly life. Beyond cooking and heat, it became a glowing shield. Hyenas pacing at the edge of vision lines crouch low in the grass. Even curious mammoths all hesitated before that shimmering wall of light. The joke among storytellers might be that the first great invention wasn't the wheel, but the camping lantern mode of burning sticks. Without it, bedtime would have been much shorter and a lot bloodier. But fire didn't just keep danger away. It also drew danger closer. The smell of roasted meat traveled far on the wind. Hyenas have keen noses. Saber-tooths had ears that twitched at every sound. Imagine the quiet terror of hearing growls in the distance, knowing that the glow which protected you might also act like a dinner bell. Quirky tidbit: some scientists argue that early humans even sang or chanted around fires, not as entertainment, but as a way to sound bigger, scarier, and harder to approach. In other words, the first bedtime lullabies doubled as lion deterrents. Consider the courage required. The fire's circle wasn't large. Step too far into the shadows, and you were meat on two legs. Every parent pulled children closer, whispering warnings not to wander. Sparks drifted upward, and eyes, bright reflective eyes, blinked back from the tree line. One wrong move, one moment of sleep too deep, and the balance tipped. Modern people get nervous hearing a twig snap on a camping trip. Imagine every twig snap carrying the possibility of a 600-pound predator. Not exactly the recipe for a relaxing evening nap, unless exhaustion simply won the battle. Still, the ancestors learned tricks. Dry wood for a taller flame, smoky leaves to sting predators' noses, ashes rubbed on skin to mask scent. Even today, some remote tribes still smear themselves with ash when hunting, a living echo of this ancient practice. Think about it. Your great-great-great times a million grandmother may have been sitting there, face painted grey, muttering a joke about who forgot to keep the fire fed. A little sarcasm helped cut the fear. Humor, even in the Ice Age, was survival glue. What makes this story linger is not just the danger, but the resilience. Firelight turned humans into something formidable. Suddenly beasts that ruled by night hesitated. Our ancestors became the only primates bold enough to sit out in the dark, refusing to be chased up a tree. That shift in courage, half desperation, half innovation, was the spark that lit a much bigger story, the rise of people who would eventually tame the wild instead of hiding from it. And so the night rolls on. Sparks swirl skyward, fading like tiny stars. The children drift towards sleep, though a mother's eyes never close, scanning the blackness beyond the flames. Somewhere in the distance a roar echoes deep and resonant. The fire flares, shadows leap, and hearts pound. Yet the circle of light holds. It's not much, but it's enough. The dawn creeps slowly grey and misty after another night of vigilance. Our ancestors step out from the circle of ash and glowing embers, stiff from cold and nerves. The first task of morning is simple but vital, reading the land. Every mark in the soil is a clue, and every clue could be the difference between returning with food or becoming food. The ground is soft from rain. Tracks line the muddy edges of the clearing. The people gather crouching low, squinting as the pale sun begins to rise. They've become detectives of the earth long before anyone thought to scribble mysteries in books. A set of round depressions, 4 toes deep claw marks, it's a hyena, and not just one. Another line of impressions, longer strides, sharper claws. That's a lion passing through in the night. Smaller, lighter prints with a zigzag pattern. A jackal, perhaps sniffing for scraps. Each shape pressed into mud is a story written hours earlier. The quirky tidbit is that some anthropologists believe children were taught to recognize paw prints before they could even form full sentences. Forget alphabet blocks. Your ABCs were lion, hyena, antelope. Tracking isn't just science, though. It's imagination. The elders point at a half-erased smear in the mud and whisper, "Look, see where it slipped. The prey must have bolted." The predator gave chase. Suddenly the picture becomes alive. A gazelle startled in the night, sprinting for safety, a lion lunging after it. These tracks aren't dead impressions. They're windows into a movie that already played out. Think about your own detective shows, but the consequences here weren't just case closed. They were survival, plain and simple. To this day, many still believe that early humans were clueless wanderers stumbling around until luck favored them. But evidence shows otherwise. Researchers studying hunter-gatherers like the Sand People of southern Africa note their extraordinary ability to track. They can tell how long ago an animal passed by the moisture in its footprint, or whether it was limping by the uneven depth of its steps. Imagine Sherlock Holmes with dusty feet and a spear. Our ancestors had that level of attention to detail. Yet the tracks weren't only warnings. They were opportunities. A fresh trail of antelope hooves could mean food if followed carefully. Families would debate whether to chase or avoid, weighing hunger against risk. Lions might be prowling near the same trail, and no one wanted to be caught in a 3-way traffic jam with sharp teeth. Joking aside, someone probably muttered, "If the antelope runs toward the lions, I say we all suddenly remember we're vegetarians." Humor kept the fear manageable. The skill stretched beyond mud. On rocky ground, hunters learned to notice subtle scuffs, displaced pebbles, or bent blades of grass. Even broken spider webs told them whether a path was used that morning. A single snapped twig leaning at an odd angle could whisper, "Something heavy passed this way." They turned the world into a giant puzzle board, one where every piece mattered. Children practiced too. They'd play games tracing their own steps and daring siblings to follow. By the time they were grown, they could tell not only the species of animal, but also its mood. Was it trotting calmly or charging in panic? A neat row of prints meant relaxed movement, while wide-spaced leaps screamed urgency. You think mood rings were trendy in the 1970s? Our ancestors had mood tracks thousands of years earlier. Still, mistakes happened. Mud was deceptive. Rain blurred details. Imagine a hunter following what seemed like an antelope trail, only to find it merged into lion paw prints. At that point, the logical strategy was to back away slowly and hope no golden eyes appeared in the grass. This blend of bravery and humility defined survival, knowing when to chase and when to walk away. It's worth pausing here. Every step into the wilderness was a gamble. But with footprints as guides, humans began shifting the odds. Instead of reacting blindly to predators, they anticipated, strategized, and prepared. It wasn't brute strength that kept them alive, but the patience to read Earth like a book. And as the sun rises higher, the tribe fans out, following trails both of prey and predator. Each step measured, each breath alert. The mud dries, the tracks harden, and the story of the night becomes history underfoot. Somewhere in those faint impressions lies the future of humankind, an unbroken chain of people clever enough to see the ground not as dirt, but as memory itself. The morning trail leads deeper into grasslands, where the shadows of beasts still linger. Among the most dreaded of all whispered about in trembling tones around the fires was the saber-toothed cat Smilodon. Imagine jaws built like a steel trap with fangs longer than your hand. Think lions are scary today. Picture one twice as heavy with knives sticking from its mouth. Suddenly that camping trip with raccoons raiding your cooler doesn't seem so terrifying, does it? Our ancestors knew the signs of a Smilodon's passage, deep paw prints in soft earth, often heavier than a man's step, with claw marks sunk in far deeper than any wolf's. Sometimes bones of prey lay scattered, their ribs cracked as though pried apart by a monstrous can opener. And sometimes the carcass was still fresh, meaning the saber-tooth was close, maybe closer than anyone wanted to believe. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against these beasts. But evidence hints that people adapted, finding bold ways to outwit them. One mainstream fact, Smilodon lived in both North and South America, thriving until about 10,000 years ago. Fossils show they hunted bison, camels, and even young mammoths. Now, quirky tidbit at the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. Scientists have found so many Smilodon fossils stuck in sticky asphalt that it's basically the world's strangest cat cemetery. Turns out the great predators were lured by trapped prey and ended up trapped themselves. Proof that even apex predators had bad luck days. But back in prehistory, meeting one face to face was no joke. Picture a small group of humans trekking near a river bend. Birds burst into the sky. Suddenly the grass parts, and there it is, a muscular cat, with shoulder blades rising like ridges, fangs glinting in the sun. The people freeze. The cat snarls low and guttural. Instinct says run, but running means your prey. Instead, the hunters scream bang sticks and hurl stones, trying to look like the noisiest, angriest creature on earth. Scholars debate whether humans ever killed saber-tooths outright or merely drove them off. Spears with fire-hardened tips may have worked if thrown in unison. But some argue that the cats' necks were too thick, their muscles too dense for such weapons to pierce fatally. What is clear is that teamwork was key. One lone human stood no chance, but a dozen shouting, stone-throwing maniacs could sometimes scare even a Smilodon into second thoughts. Safety in numbers wasn't just about friendship, it was biology's best cheat code. Imagine the tension of those encounters. You could smell the cat before you saw it, musky, pungent, wild. You could hear its growl vibrating in your ribs. A misstep, a stumble, and history ends with your skeleton added to a tar pit's collection. Jokingly, maybe one ancestor muttered, "I told you we should have invented Wi-Fi instead of spears." Humor in the face of death wasn't just comedy. It was courage disguised as laughter. The fire back at camp must have felt very far away. Yet even here in the open, humans learned to turn fear into lessons. By observing Smilodon's hunting patterns, they avoided certain valleys at dusk or slept in trees when traveling. Over time, these strategies became tradition passed down in whispers beside the fire. Children grew up with stories, "Don't wander near the river at night. The great fangs live there." Folklore wasn't just entertainment. It was survival advice cleverly disguised as bedtime tales. And so, against odds that seem impossible, humans endured. Smilodon roared, bared its fangs, and leapt. But humans, fragile and soft-skinned, survived through noise, courage, and cunning. That lesson echoed through every confrontation with the wild brains over brawn, unity over fear. It's the only reason you and I are here to imagine it tonight, safely under blankets, rather than under claws. Night is not silent for long. From the distance comes a sound that is more chilling than the roar of a lion, or the bellow of an elephant. It is laughter. Not the laughter of friends sharing a joke, but the mocking, broken giggle of hyenas in the dark. Our ancestors knew that sound too well. It meant danger circling just outside the glow of the fire, danger, with teeth strong enough to crunch bone like breadsticks. Think you hate that one neighbor's dog barking at night. Imagine a pack of spotted hyenas, each the size of a large wolf, pacing and cackling at the edge of camp. Suddenly, insomnia feels like the least of your worries. Hyenas were not just scavengers, as many people assume today. They were predators in their own right. Studies of fossilized bones show clear bite marks from hyena jaws, marks deeper than any lion's teeth could leave. In fact, quirky, tidbit hyena droppings have been found white and chalky. Because their digestive systems were so powerful, they could eat entire skeletons and still leave behind something. Let's say decorative. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against the night raids of hyena clans. Yet evidence suggests clever strategies turned the balance. One strategy was fire. The moment hyena laughter rose, people shoved more wood into the flames. Sparks flew, shadows danced, and the hyenas paced in frustration. But fire wasn't always enough. Hyenas are persistent, often returning again and again, testing the courage of their would-be prey. So the people added sound. They clapped, shouted, and even used hollow logs as drums to send vibrations out into the dark. Early music, in a way, was a form of survival theater if you couldn't outfight them, outscare them. But sometimes the beasts got bolder. Imagine a young hunter stepping too far from the camp's glow, maybe to relieve himself, maybe to fetch a stray stick of firewood. A shadow lunges, and suddenly he is grappling with a creature whose jaws can shear through a thigh bone. Others rush forward, spears in hand, hurling stones, screaming with every ounce of breath. The pack retreats, dragging away scraps or licking their lips in irritation. The camp breathes again, but no one forgets how close it came. Joking after such terror might be the only way to release the tension. Someone probably muttered, "Next time we invent indoor plumbing." Archaeologists studying ancient caves in Europe have discovered layers of bones gnawed by hyenas mixed with human remains. These were not peaceful neighbors. They were rivals for territory. Sometimes humans won the caves, sometimes the hyenas. A debate lingers among scholars about just how evenly matched the two species were. Did humans consistently drive them away with fire and noise? Or did hyenas rule the night, forcing people into cautious patterns of avoidance? The truth likely shifted over time, depending on numbers and luck. Still, the hyena encounters shaped culture. Children grew up knowing that laughter in the night was not a friendly sound. Songs and chants mimicked the predator's calls, turning fear into ritual. Over generations, these rituals became traditions passed down like lullabies of warning. Imagine falling asleep to your grandmother softly singing a tune meant to keep the hyenas from daring to step closer. Strange comfort, but comfort nonetheless. The fire glows lower, and the shadows creep back in. The hyenas circle their eyes, reflecting red in the flickering light. The people whisper, shift closer, feed the flames again. They know dawn will scatter the pack like smoke in the wind. But until then, vigilance is their only weapon. And so night after night, laughter echoes across the grasslands, and humans answer with their own chorus, half defiance, half prayer, that says, "We are still here." The cave looks inviting, doesn't it? Cool air drifts out from its mouth, promising shade and shelter. For our ancestors, a cave wasn't just a hole in the rock. It was a fortress, a place to escape storms and prowling beasts. But here's the catch. They weren't the only ones with that idea. Imagine finally finding the perfect Airbnb of prehistory, only to realize it's already booked by a cave bear the size of a small car. Suddenly, those drafty open-air camps don't seem so bad. Cave bears, Ursus spelaeus, were among the largest bears to ever walk the earth. Some males stood over 11 feet tall on their hind legs and weighed more than a ton. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against such giants, and honestly, who could blame them? Facing a bear that could swat your head clean off was not exactly a fair fight. Yet humans, stubborn as always, found ways to stake their claim. Mainstream fact archaeologists have found entire caves filled with cave bear bones across Europe, suggesting these animals hibernated there in huge numbers. In some places, bear skulls seem to have been arranged deliberately by humans, sparking debate over whether they were used in rituals. Quirky tidbit, some researchers even suggest early people saw cave bears as semi-spiritual beings, guardians of the mountain, and left offerings of bones to appease them. You could say it was the world's first awkward roommate agreement. But when it wasn't ritual, it was conflict. Picture a group of hunters scouting a cave for shelter at dusk. They smell musk, hear a low rumble from the shadows and freeze. Two glowing eyes open in the dark, followed by a grunt that shakes the walls. A cave bear is waking, and it is not in the mood to share. The hunters retreat quickly, whispering curses under their breath, while one mutters sarcastically, "Well, that's one 5-star hotel we won't be staying in." Still, humans didn't always back down. Teams would gather at the cave mouth, lighting torches and throwing them inside to drive the beast out. Sometimes it worked. The bear, irritated by fire and noise, lumbered off to find quieter ground. Other times it charged, and the hunters scrambled up rock spears, ready, praying their aim was true. Did they ever truly kill a cave bear? Some argue yes, stone spear tips have been found among bear bones. Others insist the evidence is coincidence. The debate lingers, but one truth remains: humans were bold enough to try. Imagine the tension of sitting deep inside a cave, children huddled close, while outside a bear roared and pawed at the entrance. The fire crackled, the smoke stung eyes, and every heart thumped with dread. Yet, in those stone chambers, humans felt a strange power too. The cave was more than walls. It was a womb of earth itself, a place where they painted dreams on rock and told stories that echoed long after voices fell silent. Some scholars even suggest that the act of painting bison, lions, mammoths was part of this struggle, a way to symbolically claim the cave from the beasts. Art, then, was also a weapon. Joking aside, it must have been the ultimate rental dispute, fur-covered tenants versus two-legged intruders. And while bears had size on their side, humans had persistence. They waited, plotted, returned. Slowly, through grit and stubbornness, they learned to coexist with creatures that seemed too mighty to confront. So the firelight flickers against damp cave walls, casting shadows of figures and beasts. Outside, the bears' heavy footfalls fade into the night. Inside, the humans breathe relief, knowing they've earned one more night of shelter. Survival wasn't about domination. It was about negotiation, about learning when to fight and when to step aside. And in that delicate dance with the cave bear, our ancestors proved again that wit, patience, and unity could hold their own against raw power. The land opens into a wide floodplain, grasses tall and shimmering in the sun. Water glitters ahead, promising fish reeds and a place to drink. But the river is not only a gift, it is a gauntlet. For every ancestor who knelt to scoop water, there was always the question what waits beneath the surface. Crocodiles lurked there silent, as shadows' jaws waiting to snap shut faster than any human could blink. If you think parallel parking gives you anxiety, try standing waist-deep in muddy water while wondering if your leg will suddenly vanish in a swirl of teeth. Mainstream fact crocodiles have been around since the age of dinosaurs, barely changing in design, because they've been perfect predators for over 200 million years. Our ancestors in Africa faced Nile crocodiles, some growing over 16 feet long and weighing more than a ton. Quirky tidbit fossils of even larger crocs like Crocodilus thorbjarnarssoni in East Africa suggest that some prehistoric species could have grown longer than a bus. Now imagine that sliding towards you as you lean over for a sip of water. Suddenly, dehydration doesn't sound so bad. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against the lurking monsters of rivers and swamps. But archaeology hints otherwise. Evidence of sharpened wooden spears dating back 400,000 years suggests people sometimes stood their ground, forming tight circles at riverbank, spears, poised eyes straining for ripples. The river crossing became not just an errand, but a battle of nerves and planning. Picture it, a group of hunters wades cautiously into shallows, spears raised. One watches the reed shift, another notices bubbles on the surface. Everyone freezes. Then a sudden surge, a crocodile lunges jaws wide, spears thrust downward in frantic rhythm, striking hidewood, splintering on scales. Water thrashes, white screams mix with snarls, until finally the beast retreats, bleeding into the current. The hunters gasp, dripping, one of them muttering bitterly, "Next time, let's invent bridges first." Still, humans needed those rivers. They were highways of food, fish turtles, shellfish, and water birds nesting in reeds. To ignore them was to starve, and so strategies emerged. Some groups built makeshift platforms out of logs, pushing into deeper water so they could fish, while staying clear of lurking jaws. Others threw stones in before crossing, hoping to flush out any predators. Songs were even sung before wading in, perhaps to steady nerves, or maybe to convince themselves the crocodiles respected rhythm. You've heard of whistling past the graveyard. This was whistling past the crocodile pit. And then there were the unlucky ones. Stories must have been told of hunters taken whole, vanishing in a splash. Children grew up knowing to stay away from reeds, to watch for eyes that looked like floating stones. Folklore painted crocodiles as guardians of rivers, spirits of punishment for those who grew careless. In time, some communities may have even worshipped them, offering bones or shells at the water's edge in hopes of safe passage. Scholarly debate continues. Were crocodiles just background dangers, or were they central to shaping migration patterns of early humans? Some argue that river crossings forced groups to cooperate more deeply, creating stronger bonds. Others suggest the fear of crocodiles kept people clustered near safer shallows, altering the paths of entire tribes. Either way, the beast shaped human life as surely as the fire and stone. The river glimmers under a fading sun, insects buzzing, birds darting low. Our ancestors crouch by the bank, watching ripples, judging whether it's safe to step in. Hunger presses, thirst nags, but fear calls tight. And then cautiously, carefully they move. Together. Because survival here is not about boldness alone. It is about timing, patience, and listening to the water's secrets. In those moments, the fight against wild animals is also a fight against one's own terror. And the victory is measured simply in living to see another dawn. High above the grassy plains, shadows circle. They are wide-winged, steady and hungry. Our ancestors feared lions, yes, but they also feared the sky. Giant birds of prey once soared over prehistoric landscapes, and to a small child toddling near the edge of camp, those shadows could mean sudden death. Imagine your toddler wandering a little too far, and instead of worrying about scraped knees, you're terrified of a 10-foot wingspan swooping down. Think babysitting is stressful today. Try babysitting under vulture hawk surveillance. Mainstream fact: enormous predatory birds, like Haast's eagle in New Zealand, had wingspans up to 3 meters and talons capable of piercing bone. While they primarily hunted large flightless birds, evidence suggests they could have targeted small humans as well. And in Africa, crowned eagles are still known to snatch monkeys. One fossilized hominin skull even bears puncture marks from eagle talons. Quirky tidbit scientists joke that raptor daycare duty might have been one of the earliest shared human responsibilities. You didn't just watch the kids for wolves. You watched the sky for dive-bombing death from above. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against aerial predators. Yet traces of ingenuity prove otherwise. Early camps were arranged under trees, not only for shade but for cover against sweeping shadows. Children were kept near fires where smoke and flickering light confused a bird's sharp eyes. Some tribes even tied woven branches overhead, crude canopies that shielded the vulnerable. Picture the tension: a group of mothers grinding seeds with stone mortars, children giggling nearby. Suddenly silence. Every adult freezes. A shadow glides overhead, massive wings slicing the sun. Hearts pound. Spears are grabbed, stones clutched. The bird circles, lower talons gleaming, and then a coordinated shout: stones hurled skyward, arms waving wildly. The predator veers away, unwilling to risk the noise and chaos. Relief floods the camp, though one father mutters, "Next time we invent babysitting helmets." Folklore likely blossomed from these encounters. Myths of sky spirits stealing children appear in cultures across the world, often warning the young to stay close. Maybe those bedtime tales weren't exaggerations at all, but echoes of very real dangers. A child listening wide-eyed to stories of winged monsters might fall asleep believing them legends, while the parents exchanged weary glances knowing they were cautionary truths. Scholarly debates swirl here: were the giant birds truly common threats, or are we dramatizing rare events? Skeptics argue that fossil evidence is slim, that humans were too large and noisy to be frequent targets, but others point to patterns in myth scattered across continents, suggesting these fears had deep roots in real encounters. Even today, shepherds in Mongolia guard goats against golden eagles, proof that humans and raptors have long been rivals. The campfire burns low as night falls, but the fear doesn't fade. For in the stillness, every flap of wings above the trees carries memory. Our ancestors learned to look not only into the grass and shadows, but into the sky itself, wary of dangers descending from silence. And with every stone thrown skyward, With every child pulled closer into the safety of the group, humans tilted the balance, proving again that even under vast wings they would endure. Dusk paints the savannah in gold and purple, long shadows stretching across the grass. Our ancestors know this hour well. Twilight is when lions stir. The day's heat fades, and with it the king of beasts rises to hunt. There is something chilling about that first low roar rumbling through the earth, rolling across plains like distant thunder. You might think you're tough for walking home alone at night. Our ancestors had to walk home with lions watching from the tall grass. Mainstream fact lines in prehistory range far wider than today. Cave paintings in Chauvet, France depict lions without manes, suggesting both male and female hunted together. That's right, not just one lion to worry about, but prides of them. Quirky tidbit archaeologists studying old kill sites sometimes find human bones gnawed right alongside antelope bones, as though lions saw little difference between the two. To this day, many still believe that our human ancestors were utterly powerless against lion prides, but evidence shows clever tactics kept them alive. Picture the scene, a small band of humans walking back to camp with meat slung over their shoulders. The sky dims, eyes glimmer in the grass, a tail flicks, then silence, the worst sound of all. One hunter whispers to another, "Don't run." They form a circle, spears raised, torches lit. The lions creep closer, their bodies' low muscles coiled. Suddenly a rush dust explodes, firelight wavers, shouting fills the air. Spears, jabs, stones fly. One lion snaps jaws inches from an arm before retreating. The group holds. Somehow the humans are still standing. To defend against lions, fire again played its part. Camps at night became fortresses of flame, with logs kept burning hot. But beyond that, humans developed patterns, always traveling in groups, always keeping watch at dusk, always carrying spears, even for short walks, and of course, humor found its way in. After surviving a standoff, one ancestor might have muttered, "Next time, let's invent Uber." A little laughter after terror made the night slightly lighter. But it wasn't only about defense. Over generations, humans learned lions' habits. They knew prides often hunted along specific trails or favored watering holes. Some bands avoided those paths entirely. Others used them to predict where meat might be found, later scavenging leftovers once the lions were full. To live alongside lions was to study them as carefully as they studied you. Scholarly debates persist. Were humans mainly scavengers trailing lion kills, or did they actively compete with lions for fresh prey? Some evidence suggests humans sometimes harassed prides into abandoning carcasses by waving fire and shouting. Others argue that was far too dangerous, that people simply waited. Either way, the relationship was one of constant tension, a test of courage against creatures who could outrun, outfight, and outkill them in an instant. Night falls and the campfire glows. Somewhere beyond the circle, a roar echoes again, deeper, this time closer. The children stir, clutching their mother's arms. Hunters grip spears, scanning the darkness, and yet the camp holds steady. For humans are not just prey. They are stubborn, noisy, and endlessly persistent. Lions may rule the twilight, but within the fire's glow, a new kind of power grows, a will to survive that even kings of beasts cannot fully break. The ground trembles before the herd even comes into view. A low rumble rolls through the earth, shaking pebbles loose from the hillside. Our ancestors pause, spears lowered, and look out across the plain. Mammoths, towering shapes with curved tusks like ivory scythes, shaggy hair catching the wind. To see them was awe-inspiring, but also terrifying. Because while mammoths and their cousins, the mastodons, were not meat-hungry predators, One wrong move near these giants could flatten a whole hunting party. Think getting stuck in traffic with SUVs is stressful. Try standing in the middle of a prehistoric highway filled with 6-ton vehicles that don't stop for pedestrians. Mainstream fact: woolly mammoths stood up to 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed as much as 8 tons. Mastodons were slightly smaller, but still formidable roaming forests across North America. Quirky tidbit archaeologists have found carved mammoth bones with engravings of humans and animals, suggesting that people not only hunted them, but also mythologized them, weaving mammoths into art and story. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against such giants, yet discoveries of butchered bones with stone tool marks prove otherwise. Picture it, a group of hunters shadowing a herd across open ground. They keep their distance, watching the massive animals swing tusks and trumpet warnings. When the herd pauses to graze, the hunters whisper strategies. They don't aim for the biggest bull, that would be suicide. Instead, they target the young or the old, circling, slowly driving the chosen animal away from the safety of the group. Spears are thrown, stones hurled, shouts echoing. The mammoth charges, dust rising in thunderous clouds. The hunters scatter, hearts pounding, until finally exhaustion topples the beast. Victory comes not from brute force, but from persistence, death by 1,000 stone tips. But encounters weren't always intentional. Imagine a family gathering roots near a river, when suddenly a mastodon herd comes crashing through the trees. Branches snap, mud flies, and the only option is to climb or sprint. Children are scooped onto shoulders, mothers drag the slower ones, and everyone runs like their lives depend on it, because they do. When the herd passes, the ground is scarred with deep footprints, some filling with water to become pools that will last for months. One hunter, catching his breath, mutters sarcastically, "Well, at least we don't need to dig a well anymore." Scholarly debates swirl. Did humans drive mammoths to extinction through overhunting, or was it climate change that sealed their fate? The truth may be a mix of both. What is certain is that these giants shaped human culture. Entire shelters were built from mammoth bones, draped with hides, forming sturdy homes against Ice Age winds. Some groups may have revered mammoths as sacred, their tusks carved into charms. Others sang of hunts that became legends, boasting of the day their tribe brought down thunder on 4 legs. And through it all, the danger remained. A single mammoth charge could scatter a band, leaving crushed bodies behind. To live near these giants was to balance respect and hunger, awe and fear. But it was also to glimpse the extraordinary power of human cooperation. Small, fragile figures daring to challenge mountains of flesh and bone. As the herd moves on, silhouettes fading into the dusk, the hunters gather at the edge of their trampled path. They whisper of courage, of danger, of the feast that might one day come. And in the silence after thunder, the firelight of humanity glows brighter, daring to stand even against the mightiest beasts of the earth. The grass bends under a faint wind, but something more sinister stirs beneath it. A rustle almost imperceptible, and then the flicker of scales. Our ancestors knew this danger without needing word snakes. Silent, patient, and often invisible, until it was too late. Imagine walking barefoot through tall grass and suddenly realizing that the stick you nearly stepped on is coiled and ready to strike. Forget horror movies, a rattling tail or a hiss in the darkness was the jump scare of prehistory. Mainstream fact: venomous snakes have coexisted with humans since the very beginning, from African cobras to vipers lurking in European woodlands. Their bites could paralyze, swell, or kill within hours. Quirky tidbit researchers studying primates discovered that monkeys and apes evolved a special sensitivity to snake shapes, spotting them faster than other predators. It's likely humans inherited this, which explains why even today many people instinctively flinch at a rope in the grass. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against venomous serpents, yet traditions show they adapted in creative ways. Picture a group of foragers moving through thick brush. Suddenly, someone freezes, pointing with a trembling hand. A cobra sways, hood-flared eyes locked. The group backs away slowly, keeping low, whispering warnings. Spears come up, but they hesitate. One wrong move could mean a deadly bite. Finally, a hunter steps forward, throws a stone just past the snake. Distracted, the serpent strikes at the sound, and another spear finds its mark. Relief washes through the group, though someone mutters nervously, "So, anyone else in the mood for boots?" To protect themselves, humans developed keen eyes for patterns, zigzag stripes, diamond shapes, the way grass shifted unnaturally. Children were taught songs to remember which snakes to avoid. In some regions, they carried charms made of carved bones or teeth believed to ward off serpents. Did the charms actually help? Probably not. But belief itself brought calm, and calm was the first step toward safety. Snakes also slithered into myth. Some were feared as demons, others revered as guardians. In parts of Africa, snakes were linked to fertility and rebirth, their shedding skins seen as symbols of renewal. Imagine a grandmother telling her grandchildren that the snake is dangerous, but also sacred, a creature to respect, rather than hate. These stories were as much survival manuals as spiritual teachings, reminding listeners to keep eyes sharp when walking near rivers or rocks. Scholarly debates continue. Were snakes the greatest evolutionary pressure shaping human eyesight, or did larger predators play a bigger role? Some argue venomous bites were so frequent that they influenced the very wiring of our brains. Others think snakes were simply one thread in a wider tapestry of dangers. Either way, their presence in human memory is undeniable, and yet, not every encounter ended in tragedy. Skilled hunters learned to catch snakes for food, carefully pinning the head with forked sticks before dispatching it. The meat was roasted, the skin sometimes used for decoration. Even danger could be turned into resource if approached with patience and courage. The fire at night glowed bright, but even then, serpents slithered near. People placed thorny branches around their sleeping areas, hoping to discourage unwelcome visitors. Mothers kept children close ears tuned for the faintest hiss. And when dawn came, each step into the grass carried a silent prayer that today the only sticks underfoot would be wood, not fangs. In these daily battles, humans learned the art of caution, the power of observation, and the value of teaching lessons through stories. The snake may have been small compared to mammoths or lions, but its bite carried a terror that kept humans humble. Even now, thousands of years later, a rustle in the grass can send a shiver up your spine, a reminder of nights when survival hinged on spotting danger before it struck. The night is cool, the fire burning low. Beyond the glow, a chorus rises, not laughter this time, but howls. Wolves. For countless generations, their voices sent chills through human camps, a reminder that the wild was never far away. But unlike saber-toothed cats or cave bears, wolves carried a different story. They were not just enemies, they were also potential allies. Imagine sitting in the dark, clutching your knees, and hearing that long, eerie song across the valley. Do you shiver in fear, or do you wonder whether someday those voices could sing alongside your own? Mainstream fact grey wolves have lived across Europe, Asia, and North America for hundreds of thousands of years. Fossil evidence and DNA studies suggests that some groups of wolves began interacting with humans at least 30,000 years ago. Quirky tidbit archaeologists in Belgium uncovered a 31,700-year-old skull, believed to belong to one of the earliest domesticated wolves, basically a very old proto-dog. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against packs of wolves, yet evidence of early cooperation suggests a more complex relationship. At first, though, it was rivalry. Wolves hunted the same prey deer, bison, wild horses, and followed the same migration paths. Imagine a hunting band finally bringing down an elk, only to hear howls growing closer. Shadows emerge from the tree line, a pack hungry and bold. Humans form a circle around their kill spears raised. Wolves circle too, teeth flashing in firelight. The standoff could last hours each side, growling and snarling, neither willing to back down. Finally, with enough shouting and spear thrusting, the wolves retreat. Victory for the night, but exhaustion settles heavy. Humor must have been one way to handle the nerves. Perhaps one ancestor muttered "great free concert," and no one brought drums, earning a strained chuckle from the others. Joking at the edge of danger was a small rebellion against fear. Over time, patterns shifted. Some wolves lingered near human camps, scavenging scraps. Instead of attacking, they learned that keeping a little distance brought easier meals. Humans noticed too. These particular wolves barked when strangers approached their presence, doubling as a warning system. Slowly, a tentative bond formed. Some scholars argue this was the true start of domestication, not humans taming wolves, but wolves choosing to stick around. The friendliest, least aggressive wolves survived near people, while the aggressive ones were driven off. Step by step, wolves became partners. But before that long alliance bloomed, the rivalry remained fierce. Stories must have been told of lone hunters ambushed at dusk, their cries drowned by snarls. Mothers likely warned children never to wander after dark, pointing to the hills, where eyes glimmered red in torchlight. Rituals may have grown from these fears. Wolf pelts worn as symbols of bravery, howls imitated in dances around the fire. Wolves weren't just predators. They were teachers, forcing humans to sharpen strategies, to move in tighter groups, to cooperate even more. Scholarly debates continue. Did humans first domesticate wolves deliberately stealing pups to raise by hand, or did the process unfold naturally through scavenging? Either way, the rivalry turned into something more, a relationship that would eventually reshape human survival. The very beasts once feared became companions, guardians, hunters at our side. But in the age of our ancestors' nightly battles, none of that was certain. A howl in the distance froze every heart. Spears were gripped tighter, firewood stacked higher. And yet, in the same sound, there was an echo of possibility. For in those howls was intelligence, loyalty, and a strength not unlike our own. Rival and ally, enemy and friend, the wolf carried all these faces long before it wagged its tail by the hearth. The river looks peaceful in the glow of the late afternoon, its surface glimmering like molten bronze. Children toss stones into the shallows, their splashes ringing out like laughter. But the elders keep glancing nervously toward the reeds, because they know the truth. Not all river beasts lurk beneath the water. Some thunder above it. Hippos, those round, sluggish-looking animals, were among the deadliest encounters of our ancestors. Yes, hippos. Forget the gentle cartoon versions. These creatures were tanks with teeth faster than they looked and meaner than anyone expected. Think you've had a bad run-in with an angry neighbor? Try one with a 3,000-pound animal that can sprint faster than Usain Bolt. Mainstream fact: hippos are still considered one of the most dangerous animals in Africa, killing more people each year than lions. Fossil evidence suggests they were even more widespread in prehistoric times, with species reaching into regions far beyond today's rivers. Quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptians revered the hippo so much they had both gods and demons shaped like it. Some pregnant women even wore charms of hippos for protection. Strange given the animal's real-world reputation as a walking temper tantrum. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against the fury of river hippos. But signs of survival strategies remain. Camps were rarely set too close to deep pools, and crossings were timed for daylight when hippos stayed submerged. Some groups even posted lookouts specifically to watch for ripples that betrayed their approach. Picture a group of foragers filling gourds at the water's edge. Suddenly, a grunt echoes deep and guttural. The reeds part. A massive head rises, eyes glaring, ears twitching. The people scatter, shouting warnings. One man slips, dropping his gourd as the hippo charges onto land jaws, snapping wide enough to swallow a watermelon whole. Spears fly not to kill, but to distract, striking the beast's thick hide. Dust rises, hearts pound, until finally the hippo wheels back into the water with a splash. The people breathe again, shaken but alive. One hunter mutters, "Next time we drink rain." The daily threat shaped behavior. Children were told stories of water spirits that punished carelessness, myths likely rooted in very real hippo encounters. Singing before approaching the river became a kind of ritual, both to calm nerves and to warn animals of human presence. Better a lost gourd than a lost life. Over generations, songs, charms, and taboos became the invisible armor against the unpredictable fury of the hippo. Scholarly debates remain. Did humans ever actively hunt hippos in prehistoric times? Or did they only scavenge carcasses? Some evidence of butchered bones suggests bold hunts, while others argued that attacking such giants was too risky. Perhaps like with mammoths, hunger sometimes overrode fear. Whatever the case, the stories must have been unforgettable nights of feasting after a successful hunt, or nights of mourning after a charge went wrong. In those tense moments by the river, our ancestors faced not only predators of tooth and claw, but the unpredictable rage of herbivores that could trample them like ants. It was a lesson in humility. Not every danger was obvious. Not every enemy stalked silently in the dark. Some thundered out of the reeds in broad daylight, reminding humans that survival demanded vigilance at every turn. The river shines golden as the sun sets its waters calm once more. The hippos grunt softly in the distance, claiming their territory. The people retreat to higher ground, their fires soon flickering against the dusk. And with each careful step away, they carry another reminder carved deep into memory. Respect the water's edge, for beneath its surface, and along its banks, live tempers too wild to tame. The night is heavy stars smudged behind drifting clouds. Our ancestors move quietly through the trees, firelight left behind at camp. Their eyes strain in the dark, and every crack of a twig feels like a warning. Suddenly silence breaks a rustle above. Before anyone can react, a shadow drops from the branches. Leopards. Unlike lions that roared warnings, these predators hunted with whispers. Ambush was their specialty. Think you've been startled by a cat leaping from the couch? Try one landing on your back with claws meant to slice through deer hide. Mainstream fact: leopards are among the oldest large cats still prowling Earth, adaptable and solitary hunters. Fossil records show they ranged across Africa, Asia, and even parts of Europe during prehistoric times. Quirky tidbit: archaeologists once discovered a Neolithic burial where a leopard skin had been wrapped around a human body, suggesting not only fear, but also reverence for the animal's cunning power. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against leopard stealth. Yet survival stories suggest otherwise. Picture a hunting party pausing in a forest clearing. Suddenly a scream cuts the night. A man dragged sideways, claws sinking into his shoulder. Spears flash, stones hurl, shouts echo. The leopard, snarling, drops its prey and bounds back into the branches, eyes gleaming as it vanishes. The wounded man lives, but the scar will mark him for life, a reminder that even above danger waited. After the chaos, someone likely muttered through shaky laughter, "Next time we invent helmets with roofs." Humor was not just coping, it was medicine against fear. To defend themselves, humans developed tricks. They carried torches through forests, the flames discouraging ambush. They kept children near the center of groups, protected on all sides. They even learned to watch the canopy as closely as the undergrowth, scanning for shifting leaves or glinting eyes. Some groups placed thorny branches around camp to deter predators from sneaking too close. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them a fighting chance. The leopards weren't just predators, they were competitors. Both hunted smaller game, monkeys, antelope, wild pigs. When humans grew bolder, they sometimes raided leopard kills, scaring the cat off with fire and noise. The cat's keen memory meant grudges might linger. A leopard denied a meal today might stalk the same humans tomorrow. It was a dangerous balance of theft and survival. Scholars debate whether leopards shaped early migration patterns, pushing humans toward open savannas where ambush was less likely. Others argue humans adapted to forests by becoming more vigilant, even painting leopards onto cave walls as both warning and worship. Did they fear them, honor them, or both? Perhaps all at once. Night in leopard country was never restful. Mothers clutched children closer. Hunters slept with spears across their knees, and the crack of a branch overhead sent every heart racing. Yet over time, people learned resilience. They did not give up the forests. They adapted, sharpening their senses, weaving the leopard into myth and memory. And so firelight flickers through branches, casting shadows against bark. High above, unseen eyes watch. But below, the humans huddle, whispering stories of cunning beasts and clever survivors. They know the danger waits in silence, ready to fall from the trees. But they also know something more, that even in the leopard's realm, their own persistence is a weapon. Against stealth, they answer with vigilance. Against fear, they answer with laughter. Against claws in the dark, they answer with firelight that refuses to go out. The forest is quiet, too quiet. Our ancestors tread carefully, their eyes darting to every patch of undergrowth. Then an eruption of sound. From the thicket bursts a wild boar, tusks, glinting bristles raised. It charges with terrifying speed, faster than anyone expects. Spears snap into position, but even the bravest hunters feel their hearts lurch. Think you've been startled by a squirrel darting across a hiking trail now. Replace the squirrel with a 400-pound battering ram, covered in armor and sharpened knives for teeth. That'll wake you up. Mainstream fact: wild boars have roamed Europe, Asia, and Africa since deep prehistory. Fossil evidence suggests early humans hunted them, but not without great cost. A cornered boar could gore a man in seconds, ripping open legs or stomachs with its curved tusks. Quirky tidbit: ancient Greek warriors considered the boar a symbol of ferocity, so much so that boar motifs decorated helmets and shields. Clearly, the animal's reputation as a living battering ram stretched across cultures. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against such furious beasts. Yet archaeological finds of butchered boar bones prove that humans faced them head-on. How with numbers, planning, and more than a little courage. Picture a hunting band creeping toward a muddy clearing, spotting tracks and root-torn soil where boars had fed. They spread into position, spears ready. Suddenly, one hunter makes a noise too soon. The brush explodes. The boar lunges, tusks slashing. Spears thrust some glancing off thick hide. A man is thrown aside, rolling in the dirt as the animal charges again. Chaos reigns, shouts Dustblood. At last, a well-aimed spear strikes true, slowing the beast. Another follows, then another, until the great body collapses with a final grunt. The hunters stand trembling, victorious, but shaken. One gasps out a joke, "Next time we hunt berries instead." Boar hunts weren't only about food. They were rites of passage. Young hunters proved their bravery facing such unpredictable enemies. Entire myths grew from these encounters, beasts that embodied rage stories of heroes who conquered them. Some scholars argue that these tales later influenced legends like the Caledonian boar of Greek myth. Whether in story or memory, the boar represented nature's raw defiance. But sometimes humans weren't the hunters at all. Foragers gathering roots could be ambushed by boars guarding their wallows. Imagine mothers clutching children as a tusked shape charged from the brush. The only defense was to climb, scramble onto rocks or trees, and pray the beast lost interest. These terrifying moments surely left their mark, becoming warnings told at the fireside. Scholarly debates linger. Did boar encounters significantly shape early weapon designs? Some point to stronger spearheads emerging in regions thick with wild pigs, suggesting that repeated clashes demanded sturdier tools. Others believe the animals were just one of many influences. Whatever the case, the boar forced humans to sharpen both their weapons and their courage. Evening falls. The hunters drag the heavy carcass back to camp, every step echoing the struggle it took to win this prize. The smell of roasting meat soon fills the air, but so does quiet reflection. Around the fire, the story is told again and again, each retelling louder, braver, funnier. Fear turns into legend, and legend into pride. In those moments, humans learn the strange truth of survival. Sometimes the fiercest victories come not against the biggest predators, but against the smallest giants of rage. The sea glimmers under the morning sun, calm and inviting. Our ancestors stand at the shore clutching nets woven from plant fibers and hooks carved from bone. The ocean promises fish silver flashes beneath the waves that could feed a family for days. But beneath that promise lurks danger unseen. Sharks, silent patients sliding through the water with mouths full of serrated teeth. Think swimming makes you nervous now. Imagine paddling on a log raft with nothing but sharpened sticks, while below you a shadow larger than your boat circles lazily. Mainstream fact sharks have existed for over 400 million years, long before the first humans walked upright. Fossilized teeth are found on every continent, a reminder of their ancient reign. Quirky tidbit prehistoric species like Megalodon grew up to 60 feet long, their jaws so wide you could park a small car inside. Luckily, those giants went extinct long before our ancestors began fishing, but even smaller species were terrifying enough. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against sharks, yet coastal communities found ways to fish and survive. Picture it, a group of men push a raft into the surf, balancing nervously as waves lap against its sides. They cast nets watching for the shimmer of fish. Then one notices the water shift unnaturally. A fin slices the surface. Panic ripples through the group. Spears rise, eyes dart. The shark circles closer, its dark body gliding just beneath them. A tail flick sends a spray of foam. One man thrusts a spear into the water, nothing but a splash. The predator vanishes, then reappears on the far side. Every nerve is stretched tight. At last, after a tense eternity, the shark drifts away, deciding today is not its feast. The hunters breathe again, one whispering bitterly, "Next time we invent grocery stores." But encounters weren't always so lucky. Some stories must have ended with boats overturned, nets, ripped hunters dragged beneath the waves. These losses were carved deep into memory, retold as warnings. Children were taught not to swim too far to respect the sea as much as the land. Myths of sea demons with teeth like saws spread across generations, shaped by very real predators lurking in the depths. Still, humans persisted. They learned to read the sea schools of fish darting suddenly meant a shark was near. Birds circling above hinted at safer fishing grounds. Some tribes lit fires on shorelines, their flickering reflections thought to keep predators at bay. Others carved teeth into necklaces not just as trophies, but as talismans of courage. The shark was feared, but it was also respected. Scholarly debates remain. Did sharks significantly limit early seafaring? Some argue fear of these predators delayed human exploration across open waters. Others believe people learned to coexist, developing rafts and fishing methods that minimized risk. Whatever the case, the shadow beneath the waves always remained part of the human story. As night falls, the ocean darkens its surface, rippling under the moon. Our ancestors sit by the fire, staring out at the endless black horizon. They whisper of what waits beneath eyes' unblinking teeth uncountable. Yet they also know the sea feeds them, sustains them, gives them life. And so each morning they return fragile bodies, daring to challenge the ancient hunters of the deep. Because to be human was never about avoiding danger. It was about walking or floating straight into it with nothing but courage and a sharpened stick. The savannah stretches wide heat, shimmering above the grasses. In the distance, a massive silhouette grazes with deceptive calm. A rhinoceros, heavy-bodied horn glinting like a dagger in the sun. Our ancestors watch carefully because they know the truth. This animal may look slow, but it carries fury in its muscles. One wrong step too close, and a rhino could charge faster than a horse. Think traffic accidents are scary. Try being blindsided by a 2-ton battering ram with armor-thick skin and a built-in spear on its nose. Mainstream fact woolly rhinoceroses roamed Ice Age Eurasia, while their relatives still thundered across Africa and Asia. Some species stood 6 feet at the shoulder and weighed nearly 6,000 pounds. Quirky tidbit archaeologists in Siberia found rhino skulls with scratches suggesting they were painted with ochre, possibly as part of rituals honoring the beast. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against rhinoceroses, but evidence of butchered rhino bones with tool marks proves that at least sometimes humans found ways to face them. Picture a hunting band moving along a dusty trail. Suddenly the wind shifts and the rhino catches their scent. Its ears twitch and with a snort it charges. Dust explodes as hooves pound. Hunters scatter diving behind rocks. Spears fly bouncing off hide as thick as wood. The rhino barrels through, nearly trampling a man before swerving away. Silence follows, broken only by heavy breaths. One hunter, trembling, whispers, "Next time we invent binoculars and keep our distance." Strategies slowly developed. Instead of attacking outright people, learned to trap rhinos in pits covered with branches or drive them toward cliffs and rivers where mobility gave way to chaos. Fire was sometimes used, the smoke confusing beasts and scattering herds. It wasn't foolproof. Rhinos were stubborn, unpredictable, and capable of killing multiple hunters in minutes. But persistence occasionally brought victory. Yet humans didn't only fear rhinos, they respected them. Their horns became prize symbols carved into tools or worn as charms. Myths painted them as guardians of grasslands, dangerous but sacred. children were warned never to play near wallows where rhinos rolled in mud to cool their hides. A splash in the wrong place could trigger a deadly charge. Folklore told of spirits riding on rhinos' backs, punishing those who wandered too boldly. Scholars debate, did prehistoric hunters specifically target rhinos, or were they mostly opportunistic scavengers of carcasses? Some argue that rhino hunts were rare, desperate attempts when food was scarce. Others believe that cooperative strategies made them a deliberate, if dangerous, choice. Either way, encounters etched deep scars into memory, both physical and cultural. Night falls, and the hunters sit around their fire retelling the story of the day's charge. Fear fades into humor, someone acting out the rhino snort children giggling nervously. In laughter, the terror softens, turned into a story that teaches caution. Tomorrow, when the tribe walks again, they'll remember where the rhino crossed and give it wide respect. The savannah hums under moonlight, insects buzzing, grass rustling. Somewhere out there the rhino grazes again, calm for now. Humans lie awake knowing the peace could shatter in an instant. Yet still they endure, fragile bodies standing tall against horned giants, proving again that survival was not about avoiding danger, but about meeting it with watchfulness, courage, and the stubborn will to live another day. The air is sharp with anticipation, the camp unusually quiet. Our ancestors gather with spears stone-tipped and fire-hardened, their faces tense in the firelight. Tonight, they are not waiting for predators to test them. Tonight, they are the hunters. For countless generations, humans were prey-dodging lions, saber-toothed cats and hyenas. But slowly, with patience and cooperation, they learned to turn the tables. Think teamwork at the office is hard. Try coordinating 12 nervous people with pointy sticks against a woolly mammoth. One wrong move, and it's not just the project deadline you miss, it's your heartbeat. Mainstream facts, some of the earliest clear evidence of coordinated hunting comes from Schöningen, Germany, where 300,000-year-old wooden spears were found perfectly balanced for throwing. These weren't crude toys, they were precision tools, quirky tidbits. Some of those spears were carved from spruce trees and shaped carefully with fire, showing that our ancestors were more like skilled carpenters than bumbling cavemen. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against the wild giants, yet those artifacts prove a level of craftsmanship and courage that defies the stereotype. Picture the scene: a herd of bison grazes in the valley. The hunters spread out, moving like shadows along the ridges. One group circles wide, driving the animals toward a choke point between rocks. Another group waits in ambush, knuckles white around their spears. Dust rises, hooves thunder, and suddenly the trap springs. Shouts echo, spears fly, blood sprays. A bison stumbles, pierced and surrounded. The hunt is brutal, but it is also triumphant. For the first time, humans are not simply fending off danger, they are creating it. Of course, danger still lurked. Hunts could go terribly wrong. A charging bison could gore a hunter, tossing him like a rag doll. A mammoth, panicked and furious, could trample half the group before breaking free. Even success came at a price. And yet, every time the strategy worked, the reward was enormous meat for weeks. Hides for clothing, bones for tools. One hunter, dragging meat back to camp, probably muttered with a grin, "See, told you teamwork works better than arguing." These moments reshaped human culture. Feasts followed hunts, with entire communities sharing the bounty. Songs celebrated bravery, stories immortalized heroes, and rituals honored the spirits of the slain animals. Survival was no longer about avoiding death. It was about claiming life boldly. This shift changed everything. Scholarly debates spark here. Did humans really hunt giants like mammoths, consistently, or were most kills opportunistic young sick or trapped animals? Some argue the evidence of large-scale butchering sites proves organized hunts. Others say scavenging was still the main source. But even if opportunistic the fact remains, humans began stepping into the role of predator. Around the fire, laughter mixes with pride. Children listen wide-eyed as elders retell the day's victory, embellishing with jokes and boasting. Fear transforms into courage through the act of storytelling. And tomorrow, when another herd appears on the horizon, the hunters will rise again, spears in hand, daring to face giants. For the first time in history, the balance shifts. Humans once prey trembling in the dark stand together as predators, their strength not in claws or fangs, but in unity and imagination. That spark of courage born in firelight and sharpened on stone would carry them further than any beast could chase. The wind carries the smell of smoke and earth mingling with the faint musk of animals far beyond the firelight. Our ancestors sit close, their bodies weary, but their spirits alive. Tonight there is no frantic scramble from predators, no sudden charge of horn or tusk. Tonight there is memory, reflection, and whispers of survival. After generations of living as prey, every scar, every story told by the fire is proof of something extraordinary, that fragile humans with no claws and no fangs have endured among giants. Mainstream fact anthropologists believe that fire cooperation and storytelling became as vital as stone tools in shaping human resilience. Around those fires, strategies were shared, mistakes became lessons, and victories turned into rituals. Quirky tidbit archaeologists once found a 30,000-year-old carved ivory figurine of a lion-headed human in Germany. Was it myth, a talisman, or a story about humans claiming courage from predators? No one knows, but it shows imagination was as sharp as any spear. To this day, many still believe our human ancestors were utterly powerless against beasts of the past. Yet those carvings, bones, and fire pits prove the opposite. They faced the wild daily and survived. Picture them, parents pointing out constellations, naming stars after animals they feared or hunted. Children curl against mothers' arms, their eyes wide, as elders whisper tales of saber-tooths, lions, crocodiles, and wolves. Each story is half warning, half lullaby, turning terror into lessons. Laughter punctuates fear. Someone jokes about hippos being the angriest vegetarians on earth, and the camp chuckles, fear softened for a moment. Scholarly debates remain, of course. Some argue humans rose because they were cleverer. Others say luck and climate shifts gave them openings. But the truth feels simpler. Survival wasn't just about spears or fire, it was about spirit. The refusal to quit, the stubborn courage to step into darkness night after night, knowing jaws waited. That was the true weapon. As the flames dwindle, shadows stretch long. The great beasts of the world, saber-toothed cave bears, mammoths, have passed into memory, but their echoes remain in our bones. Our ancestors walked with fear, yes, but also with resilience. They taught us that being human was never about being the strongest, but about daring to survive anyway. And now, as you lie safe beneath your blanket, imagine that fire crackling before you, sparks drifting toward the stars. Hear the laughter, the warnings, the courage whispered in the dark, because their story is yours. The heartbeat of survival that carried them through the ages still beats quietly in you tonight. And so, as the fire fades, let the story soften too. The great beasts retreat into shadow, their roars and growls fading into the hush of night. Picture the embers glowing gently, not as shields against predators now, but as warm stars cradling your rest. The struggles of our ancestors, their vigilance and daring all blur into a soft rhythm, like waves against a quiet shore. You no longer need to stand guard. Their courage has already carried you here. Feel the weight of history settle around you, not heavy, but comforting like a blanket woven from thousands of nights survived. Every crack of twig, every flicker of flame, every whispered warning, they were part of a song of endurance. That song drifts toward you now, slower, softer, a lullaby hummed across time. You can let your breath fall into that rhythm, steady and calm. Inhale the quiet, exhale the worry, the images of predators' fangs, claws' eyes glowing in the dark fade into silhouettes, harmless and distant. Instead, imagine the soft glow of firelight on faces, laughter after fear stories that turn danger into wisdom. Those moments remind you that even in the harshest nights, humanity found comfort in togetherness. You too are part of that lineage, safe in a circle of light that has never gone out. As you drift deeper, picture the stars overhead, the same stars your ancestors once named and trusted. They are patient, eternal, keeping watch while you rest. The wind whispers through the trees, not as a warning now, but as a lull guiding your thoughts toward stillness. The beasts are gone, the camp is safe, and your only task is to close your eyes and surrender to sleep. Let your body grow heavy, let your mind grow quiet. The story has carried you this far, and now it will carry you into dreams. Sweet, deep dreams where no danger waits, only warmth, safety, and peace.